Welcome to Majority Rules. We are back from our week-long hiatus with another episode. This is Season 1, Episode 30. This is, as always, a podcast about Mizzou Athletics Majority, which is Olympic sports athletes. School's almost over. Everybody's about to head off for the summer. Abigail's graduating. So I think first, we should give our dear Abigail a round of applause for. And sad, yes. I'm going to wipe away my tears for her leaving us. But we're happy that she joined us for maybe her last show. We'll see. If it's not, we'll just play it by ear. See if you're too busy for us going forward. But we're happy to have you here. Dylan is off doing something else, going to a sorority formal or something, and Rory has a giant test tomorrow. So yep, we've got the four of us. I am Karen Steger. I'm the host of this podcast and the Olympic sports manager and gymnastics and softball beat writer at Rock M Nation. Today's question of the day, which I also will have you answer as you introduce yourself, is I want you to give Mizzou Athletics a grade for the year, since grades are almost due, and why you want to give them that grade. Let's start with our upcoming graduate, Abigail.
Thank you very much for that warm introduction. For the tears shed, Quentin, means a lot coming from you guys. Been my biggest fans, biggest supporters of Rock M all the way. So, really, when I walk across that stage, I bring these memories with me. Shake the hands.
I'll be there.
Much appreciated. My name is Abigail Klapatauskas. I, for not very many more weeks, am a senior at Mizzou, and I am the track and field and cross country beat reporter. I think when you have a season in which you crown two individual national champions, it's hard for me to grade this athletics program anything lower than an A. But for most of the sports beyond track and field and gymnastics, I was slightly disappointed in comparison to last season, so I would give it an A-.
Okay. Matthew, let's go to you.
First off, I just want to shout out Abigail. I don't think we've talked about it on this show, but this entire year, while she's been also covering track and field for us, she's also been the co-sports director for Mizzou student radio station, KCOU, and done an absolutely phenomenal job there. So that is just incredible multitasking, and I think that we should definitely shout her out for that. My name is Matthew Gustafson. I am the volleyball, wrestling, and baseball beat writer for Rock M Nation. And similar to Abigail, I am going to give Mizzou an A-. I think that there was a lot of progress, a lot of success. Like you talked about, the two individual national champions, obviously gymnastics had a banner year. And also, you look at the North End Zone project. You look at track and field getting a much needed upgrade, both in indoor and soon to be outdoor as well, and a new pitch for soccer too. And then you also have, again, a much needed turf replacement coming up for baseball. So definitely progress on the facility side of things at Mizzou. That being said, again, there were a couple of low points. Obviously, Diamond Sports both took a step back this year. Baseball is having a historically bad season. We'll get to that in a little bit. Women's basketball, kind of a lame duck season there from Robin Pinston, went about as well, and aka poorly as we expected. And some progress in other areas. I mean, tennis, I'm pretty excited for the future of that program. They kind of made a step in the right direction for the first time in a long time, and they've got a really young roster and a really young head coach too. Right, so a lot of room for growth. That being said, they're still at pretty much the bottom of the SEC. So I think you can acknowledge that there's been progress made, but also that there's a very long way to go at the same time. And so for all of those reasons, again, it is absolutely an A. Great year overall for Mizzou Athletics, but there were a couple of things that lead to me giving them an A-.
Good. Quentin, what about you?
Well, first of all, I'm Quentin Corpuel. I've been doing spot work for RockM in regards to men's and women's basketball transfer news lately, and that's about it. But I'll also
Because you're not
take,
allowed to cover football anymore.
correct. I have been banished, but I will take
You know what
30
you
more
did.
seconds. I'm going to take 30 more seconds to shout out Abigail again, because she won't say it herself. But in addition to covering track and field, being co-sports director for KCOU, she has done some phenomenal work with Mizzou's strategic communication department for most of our time here at Mizzou, but especially lately. And so she gave a kick butt presentation today that got rave reviews from Karen, and I'm sure rave reviews from most, if not everybody in attendance. It's tough to play poorly when you're wearing a kick butt pink blazer like Abigail was. And
Yes.
so I just wanted to compliment her again, because she has done some pretty great work this year and in years past, and she deserves her flowers as she is about to graduate. And
You guys
so,
are very- Thank you.
oh,
Thank you.
of course, Matthew and Abigail stole my answers, so I'm going to keep this quick. I'm also going to give Mizzou Athletics an A-. I think Matthew laid it out perfectly. You don't just consider the results, you consider other things that indicate progress, and facility upgrades are definitely a great marker of that. And with the results, I mean, football wins 10 games for 2 years in a row for just the third time in program history. Men's basketball makes the NCAA tournament as a 6th seed, early exit notwithstanding. Gymnastics, volleyball, both awesome. But then you have to consider baseball and softball and women's basketball.
Soccer.
And soccer. That drags, I think, Mizzou down to an A-. But this was a pretty great year overall for Mizzou Athletics. I think, like, I go back to something I had talked about with Adine after Mizzou beat Kansas in men's basketball. Like, my class, Abigail's class, and Matthew's class, we're 3 different classes. Abigail's class 25, I'm class 26, Matthew's class 27. All 3 of our classes have experienced a collection of Mizzou sporting events that not many classes of Mizzou students, not just in recent memory, but ever, can say they experienced. And so I was very impressed with what they were able to accomplish this year. And hopefully, for their sake, these new upgrades to facilities and injections of, NIL money and whatnot propels Mizzou even further.
I like that. And I'll stick with it. Let's go A- also. Because I also think that, while diamond sports are down, you have, like Matthew said, like tennis is trending up. Golf is trending up, men's and women's. Gymnastics, obviously, killing it. Wrestling's trending down, but like women's basketball, I can't think. Women's basketball had an off season, but however, like they made a change, got a new roster, got a new coach. Like now it's trending up. So I think that they kind of cancel each other out. And then with also like Matthew said and Quentin chimed in, like with the facilities improvements and stuff like that, I think things are in a good spot. And I don't think that like softball, when we'll get to it, like I don't think they're going to be down for long. Like Larissa would probably rather die than have another season. So I'd say an A- also. So yeah, thank you everyone. We will start with the in-season sports. There's just really not a lot of them going on anymore. There's a whole 2 sports still in. Well, I guess technically golf is still in session because of what is her last name's Tion.
Keely
Tion
Simon?
or what I don't even know how to say her name. She's an NCAA golf championship. So technically that one's still in season 2, but Roy's not here to talk about it. So yeah, let's start with baseball. Matthew, things continue to just really go off the rails for the Mizzou baseball team.
Here's the thing, though. You've heard the phrase, you lose big, lose close, win big.
Bobby
They're
Bowden.
starting to move towards losing close. Think about Mizzou softball this year, where they're going up against some quality competition. They keep it close. They're showing they're competitive, but they just can't find a way to win the game. That pretty much describes the last week in Mizzou baseball, the week in which Mizzou probably got its best pitching of the year, and in which baseball has been playing some of its best baseball all season long. You have number 9, Georgia, who has since moved up to number 6. They're actually ranked first in the nation in the RPI, and I think 1 or 2 other polls. So some people and the RPI have this as the nation's number 1 team. And Mizzou kept it close 2 out of 3 games. The first game, they lose 9-2. The important caveat there is that 7 of those 9 runs came in the final 3 innings. And then Saturday, you lose at 5-2. You lose at 4-2 on Sunday. That was a particularly tough one for the Tigers. They give up 2 runs in the 9th after scoring the game-tying run in the bottom of the 8th. So they tie it up, and they immediately give up the lead. The reason that has been this close is like I said, they've gotten the best pitching all year. Brady Kellenbrink and Will Libbert are 2 young pitchers who have really started to show development towards the end of this season, throwing some of their best outings of the year. You're starting to see a pretty good number of those ERAs trend downward on this team, kind of across the board. I've talked about how part of the reason I'm not as concerned with this year as others is that pitching simply takes longer to develop. Well, you're getting to the end of the year and you're starting to see some of that development. In addition, you've gotten some guys back healthy. The problem right now is the hitting. During this losing streak, the Tigers have now lost 12 straight. That is a record for the program. The previous record of 10 was set under Steve Beazer in 2021. So the program's 2 longest losing records in its history have both been in the last 5 years. It's been just the bats have gone cold. They heated up a little bit yesterday against KU, came to Columbia, and they lose by 6-5. This is a game where they took the lead in the 5th inning. They had a 5-3 lead, and they held that until the top of the 8th when they ended up giving up 2 runs. Those 2 runs would win it for KU. Progress made by the offense. That being said, they still had a large number of runners that they stranded in scoring position. So it's simply a team that is not getting it done on the hitting side. With runners in scoring position, they're able to put pressure on the pitching, on the defense for the other team, but they're not able to knock in those runs and come up in the big situations when they need to, which, again, is not something that is unusual for a young, inexperienced team. And that is what head coach Garrett Jackson has talked about in these post-game press conferences. Hey, the pitching isn't holding them back anymore. And it's just a young team. They need to figure out how to win. They need to stop making those small mistakes that you will see young teams make, because in those close games, that's what's the difference. And that's why they keep losing, is they simply don't know how to win yet. They're young, they're inexperienced, and that's going to happen to the young team like that. That being said, the results are improving, but it hasn't translated to wins. And the longer this losing streak continues, both overall in terms of the last 12 games and in terms of the winless SEC record, obviously pressure continues to mount. I still think this team can win a game in the SEC. In fact, I feel more confident in this team's ability to win a game in the SEC than at maybe any other time this year during conference play. I think that was probably the best they've looked all season. In conference play, you've got Mississippi State a couple weeks from now, Texas A&M, which has looked better of late, but they haven't, been world beaters by any means this year. So coming off of a week where you faced a top 10 team a team that some consider the number one team in the nation, and a team in KU that just recently left the top 25, you're going to see a slight dip in the quality of competition. And you're playing your best baseball of the year. The Bats made progress on Tuesday. Obviously, this is still a terrible year for Mizzou baseball. But again, there are some positive signs and some signs that maybe this team can get that first SEC win here in the final 2 weeks.
What's next for them, Matthew? Who do they play this weekend?
Next up this weekend, they're going to be in College Station facing Texas A&M. Defending national champions that have had a highly disappointing year.
All right. That sounds good. Thank you, Matthew. I know you have to leave us and, do things like eat and things. So
Yeah.
and study, whatever.
I've got to get on a Amtrak train Friday, so I'm kind of scrambling to finish everything up here the last couple days.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, as always, for your baseball updates, and I really hope that they get at least a win. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to Abigail. Track and field.
First, I was just going to say, I'm sure he'll hear this when he listens back, but I think in sports journalism, there are so many ways to cover a team that's winning, but often teams that lose get covered only a single way, and that narrative gets very pigeonholed. And Matthew's just done a really great job all season of providing the story behind why they lost and making it much more interesting than just this is a bad team. He, I think, does a really good job of adding that context that it's still interesting to follow a team that's losing over and over and over again. And that has been cool and inspiring to me. Yeah, thankfully, that's not the case with Mizzou track and field. They're winning, so that helps. Because it's not fun covering a team that's not doing well. So let's jump right into it. Pun intended. Claudina Diaz is ranked 8th in the nation in the women's high jump with her personal best 185. 185 used to be rare air for the women's high jumpers, like for years and years before Claudina Diaz and Christy Perez-Sneeman, and now they're reaching it in multiple meets, which is really exciting. She interestingly ranks 3rd in the SEC above her teammate because Christy Perez-Sneeman set a 188, but not at a collegiate meet. She recently is the first South African national she took first at the South African National Championship. So that's incredible. She jumped 188. That ranks 76th in the world. Now, the world rankings are not reflective of the top 76 marks. It's a combination of point systems that World Athletics decides that is far more complicated than I understand or could explain to you. But she's 76th in the world rankings, which is incredible. So interestingly, right now, Clow ranks ahead of her, but Christy has outjumped her, just not at a collegiate meet. Okay. Speaking in terms of jumps, my biggest update for Rock M is that Jonathan Sarum will not be competing at all this outdoor season. I was waiting to see if he would maybe compete in the triple jump later, but interestingly, they weren't just saving him for practice. It's about his eligibility situation. So I reached out to one of the SIDs, and he told me that Jonathan will be taking the entire outdoor season off to retain 2 full years for 2026 and 2027. And he is using this outdoor season to train for Worlds later this summer, which makes sense. So unfortunately, we will not be seeing a 2-time triple jump champion in the same season, but never fear. I think that's coming in 2026. Interestingly,
when you're not covering them anymore.
I know. It's a bummer. Trust me, I had my moment, but that is okay. This is about Jonathan Sarum and not me. He is ranked 29th in the world rankings. So best of luck to him in the world. That just goes back to what Coach Shmov said last season and continues to reiterate when I talk with him this season that, these track and field athletes aren't just training for NCAA outdoors. They have a year-long cycle that sometimes aligns with the college schedule and sometimes doesn't, particularly when it's a Worlds or Olympic season, Olympic year. While for us, NCAAs is so important, for some of the individual athletes like Christy, the South African National Championship is equally, if not more important. So just in principle.
Remind me about that when I get to gymnastics to bring that up.
Okay, I will.
Kaya.
Oh, yes. And then just a few other names to watch out for. Alicia Burnett, the short sprints. She ranks 15th in the nation with her 11.23 100-meter dash. Her 200-meter isn't in the top 25 yet, but I know for outdoor qualifications it doesn't need to be, but it looks like she'll only qualify for SECs in the 100, which is interesting because she holds the 200 meter school record. She holds the 100, 60 meter, and I believe the 200 now as well. And then the javelin throw is like the newest field event to watch. Like last year, it was the discus and the women's hammer throw, and they're still doing relatively well, but the men's and women's javelin throwers are like off the charts. Valencia Barrios remains in the top 25 with a 52.99 javelin throw. And then I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Callan Soldado is 13th for the men with a 72.52 meters. It's just wild to me to imagine throwing a javelin at all, picking one up, honestly, and then throwing it 72 meters. Like, that's wild. And the fact that 12 men can throw it farther than him in D1 is even more wild to me. Like, javelin is such a bizarre event. So my admiration thus is exponential for those athletes. Next up on the track, they will be competing at SEC Outdoors in Kentucky, May 15th through the 17th.
Nice. Thank you, Abigail. And if this is the last time we ever have you on our podcast to talk about track, then that was a really good one to go out on, but hopefully it's not the end.
Thank you very much. Same. I hope not.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the segment that you all love the most. Of course, it's golf and swim and dive. Sorry I couldn't be with everybody live, missing the crew, but unfortunately it's almost finals week, so I am swamped with tests and projects currently. So we're going to start off with golf. Last time we spoke, the men were looking like they could advance. They were ahead of some competition. However, they did not move on in the SEC tournament and finished in 16th place, which is unfortunately last in the conference. However, with women's golf, some lighter news there, as Fionn Tinan actually made it to the NCAA regional. She was one of the top 200 golfers in women's golf. So she wrapped up her season, closing out a historic season for the women. In the final round of the tournament, she carded a 6 over 78 to finish with a 54-hole score of 230. She was in a field of 65 golfers that included 22 ranked inside of the top 150, and she finished in 55th overall. So huge performance from her. Excellent work. That is just amazing. She has had a stellar career here as a Tiger. So just an incredible performance to cap off her season. But moving on to swim and dive, not a lot of updates. However, there have been some recent signings in the last few days. So Hayden Shawsey, don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, has signed to be a Tiger. She is a transfer from Arizona State. However, she is from Missouri, so it's a homecoming for her. She is a 4x50 free state champion. She's a four-time, I don't know why I said 4x. She's a four-time 50 free state champion. She was a MISHA Class 1A and 2 state record holder in the 100 free and also a Class 2 state record holder in the 50 free. Again, she comes from Arizona State. Another signing is Quinlan Gould, who is another transfer from Arizona State. However, he is coming from Happy Valley, Oregon. He is a state champion in the 100 back and also a Big 12 championship finalist. Yep, Big 12 champion finalist in the 200 free, 100 back, and 200 back. Huge pickup for the Tigers, who will be losing some assets just from seniors leaving. So just another huge acquisition. They've had a couple recently, another one from Indiana that we talked about last week that could be filling the role of Grant Bachensky. So positives to take away from swim and dive, and expect a Olympic sports update piece from me shortly, hammering out the final details with that. But I'll talk to you guys soon.
No, oh my God, it's already time to transition to out of season sports because the school year is almost over. And to lead off, Mizzou softball season came to a very sad ending very quickly and in a typical of this season anyway, Mizzou fashion yesterday with a 1-0 shutout in which they only hit 3 hits. And yeah. So I figured that Quentin and I would talk about that because he just did a really nice piece for Sports Illustrated. And I'm sure he has thoughts. I have thoughts. Quentin, if you want to start with some of your interesting fun facts from your story, we'll start there and then kind of get into it.
Yeah, just to preface, none of those were fun. There was no fun to be
I know.
had.
I say fun, but they were not. They're sad facts.
Yeah, very sad facts. Like you said, yesterday was sort of an encapsulation of Mizzou softball's 2025 season. It was kind of like watching paint dry. It was kind of like copying and pasting text from a PDF onto another document, but then all the words are messed up. So you have to keep doing it again and again, hoping for a different result, and it just doesn't work. And a 1-0 shutout loss in the first round of the SEC tournament, that was pretty fitting for how this season went. I guess I'll lead off with this sad fact. Did a little bit of math, which is not very common for us journalism majors.
But important.
But yes, very
know
important.
About numeracy.
Yes.
According to the assessment committee, which I'm a part of.
You want to give yourself credit. You do more math in your articles than most journalists, Quentin. So you are not you do not align with the stereotype that we are unfamiliar with numbers.
Breaking stereotypes. I love it. But I calculated. I say calculated as if this was some like super complex formula. I
sure
just calculated by year Mizzou softball's runs per game average since 2006, because that was the last PDF box score that I could find where I wouldn't have to manually add up the runs from the schedule on Mizzou softball's website. I only had to do that once. And that was 2006. And I found that this year, 2025, Mizzou softball's average runs per game of 4.61 was its lowest since 2006, which was the last time Mizzou missed the NCAA tournament. And I also threw in, that was also the same year that some of the current freshmen on the team were born. That is how long ago it has been since Mizzou softball.
The unwritten rule guys were like, why did Quentin make me feel so old with that statement?
I felt a little old too. I'm going to be completely honest. But it's the truth. And I had also mentioned like last year wasn't that much better. Last year's runs per game average was 4.73. One of the main differences was that Mizzou just kept finding ways to win games. And that had to do with a few things. One is that they had an upper echelon pitcher nationally in Lauren Krings that saved their butts multiple times.
Yes.
Most memorably in regionals against Omaha when Mizzou faced another Iron Woman in the circle in Cameron Meyer. They obviously didn't have that this year. Even though Marissa McCann and Sierra Harrison and Taylor Pennell are still solid, they were not Lauren Krings. And even in games like against like Kansas, for example, they slipped up once. There was only one slip up. That was the 3-run homer, but that was enough. Last year, I found that Mizzou went 29-13 in games decided by 3 runs or fewer. This season, they went 9-23 in those same games, including yesterday against Ole Miss.
Well, and Larissa kind of talked about that a little bit too, that this team, she kept talking about how like the stats really aren't that different between last year and this year. But she said that the difference between this team and last team is that this team like didn't know how to win. Or like they didn't know how to really compete. Like how Quentin said, like how last year they knew what to do in that situation. And it was like so much of this season, a runner would get on base and then the next person would come up and they'd be swinging for the fences instead of just trying to, get something small done. And I think that they just, like she said, like they didn't know what to do. I mean, I think 2/3 of the team is underclassmen.
So
So I think that's part of the issue. And a bunch of the players, the sophomores, didn't play a lot last year. So like this is like their first meaningful reps, and they aren't all Madison Walker.
And when they're digging themselves in 2-run homer, 3-run homer, I mean, then you're digging yourself in a hole. And if you already are struggling to know how to win, you have to
Right.
figure that out much, much quicker. I think they set themselves up to have more of those questions. There's kind of the difference in mentality of if you don't know how to win, then you're just playing not to lose. And that's
Mhm.
how they looked often, especially in some of those.
Mhm.
I mean, most, they had like 9 1-run or 7. I guess Quentin would know. I read something that there were way too many 1-run game decisions that they lost. And a lot of that comes down to just situational hitting and a lack of understanding.
Yeah, I wasn't in like I couldn't see what was going on in each player's brains, but like both of you are definitely correct. Experience definitely had a lot to do with both last season's successes and this season's failures. Like Lauren Krings, Maddie Gallagher, Jenna Laird, Alex Honnold, like all of them had played a lot of softball and had dealt with adverse situations before
Right.
and clearly knew how to handle it. And they were also really good, which helped. This season, like a lot of underclassmen got thrown into the fire. Like Madison Updegrove, regular starter. Sophie Smith was a regular starter for most of the season. Again, Madison Walker just didn't really play that much last season for as good as she was
Right.
this year. Like she just didn't play that much because Abby Hay, outplayed her. And so I think when you look at the lack of experience this year, that definitely showed up. Even though somebody like Abby Wilhelm stepped up against Georgia, hit that late home run in game 1 of that series, strikes out looking to end the season. And so I think their youth showed up, but Larissa Anderson has talked about, I think multiple times this year, how she wants the underclassmen, especially the freshmen, to get those in-game reps so that when they get to next year and the year after, they know how to handle those situations versus not playing them at all as freshmen and then seeing those situations for the first time as a sophomore when you need to produce in order for your team to win. Larissa Anderson doesn't want that. And so if Mizzou softball returns to national prominence next year, or hopefully for them at the very least the year after, they are going to be very thankful that people like Updegrove and Wilhelm and Smith and even like Nevaeh Watkins got spot playing time. They're going to be very thankful that they were put in those situations to start, because down the line when they need the then juniors and seniors to step up, they know how to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
That
Well,
was
and
the
like
difference of those.
Sanaya Hill too,
Mhm.
before she got hurt, like she was off to a really good start. Another freshman.
If like even in my 4 years, this was the first year when the graduates left a hole that wasn't ready to be reloaded. Like they just had so much depth of experience. And even before I got here, this was the first season that, everyone talks about how it's important rebuilding seasons are until you're in the midst of one, and then you complain of why a rebuilding season is happening. And this was a rebuilding season. They did not have the roster reload that they needed, that they had in the pitcher circle the last 3, 4, 5 years.
Right.
And that's okay. I don't evaluate it negatively for, I mean, they were still hitting. They stole a few wins against number 1 seeds. I mean, that's impressive.
They had a good amount of top 25 wins. They had a decent
Your
amount of top
entire
10
schedule
wins.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
How do
So
you
she
evaluate
has talked
something?
about.
Is it disappointing based on, or are you proud or just more disappointed based on the expectations that you had for the season?
Well, solely based on preseason expectations, definitely disappointed because they were a top 25 team preseason. Yeah. They were supposed to be in contention for a national seed once again. Now, considering everything else, not as disappointed. We mentioned the schedule. Holy crap. They played a ringer this year. And it wasn't just the SEC. Like, they played several teams in the non-con that are going to be national seeds in the NCAA tournament. And that's not common. And then you throw in the SEC, where each of the top 10 teams in Warren Nolan RPI and strength of schedule are all SEC teams. Like, I mean, it was like men's basketball this past season with how, I mean, everybody is good. And almost all wins you pick up against SEC opponents are good wins, which is going to be really helpful probably to at least one team come selection Sunday or selection day, because one of the first things that's always brought up is how many good wins did you have? And the SEC, because it's so good, they offer more opportunities than every other conference in the country. And I mean, we've talked about it before. Mizzou hosted 3 teams that were ranked number 1 in the country, which had never happened before in program history. In
NCAA history,
that probably won't ever happen again.
I hope not. Not to Mizzou anyway.
And like, yeah, they stole some games. They beat Oklahoma. They beat Texas A&M. They play a full series. All the games were close at the very least. But they didn't have any cakewalks. I mean, even the midweek against Southern Illinois, like Southern Illinois is a good mid-major team. Like, they could really catch breaks, even against all the mid-major teams they faced in the midweeks. And so I don't want to excuse Mizzou for losing the amount of games they did and coming up with one of the 5 worst seasons in program history in terms of winning percentage. But it was a really difficult road with a roster I just don't think was quite ready to compete for a national championship.
Well, and I have 2 things on that. So the first about the schedule, because she had talked about that in one of the last some media availability, was that most of their schedule is figured out. She said something like 2 years in advance. So there's really no preparation for that. And for like the MTEs, they don't have a choice of who they play. Like, they're just assigned teams. She was very adamant, though, they will have to look at the other games outside of the MTEs and the SEC schedule and figure out something with their schedule to make it so that they are not in this position, like, basically ever again, where they're not like fighting to try to get to 500 at this point in the year, where they're counting games, being like, okay, if we can get this one, then it's possible, but if we don't get this one. So she said that they will have to take a look at those midweek games and things like that, where they can actually make alterations in their schedule to make it so it's not so hard on them in the future, because that really was a huge issue with them. My other thing is that, and it's so confusing to me, because like how successful they were last year, and like the culture of this team like has been like just off the charts. With how much success that they had last year, like, I do not understand how they weren't more successful in the portal. Like, people should have been like begging to play for this team, like, because like they were having the most fun. They seemed like a family, like so good. Just like people should have been like beating down the doors to play for them. And for whatever reason, like there's no, like, you're not going to find a Lauren Krings in the portal, obviously, but like I cannot figure out how they didn't get a picture in the portal. Like, how did that not happen? Now Taylor Ebb's great, like great addition. I don't know what ended up happening with Hayden Sokolowski. I feel like she might have gotten hurt, because that last series, I don't think she was dressed out, the last home series. So I'm guessing that she probably ended up hurt, but like I expected a bit more out of her. But like she's got to do better in the portal.
Yeah.
When every SEC team is retooling and like grabbing people left and right. Like these other teams are getting farther and farther ahead, and Mizzou is just like complacent. It drives me insane.
Yeah, well, I think with the pitchers, and well, one other thing, I completely forgot to mention this. Cara Daly and Julie Crenshaw were just like fully dealing with major injuries for the latter half of the season.
And still had career seasons.
And yeah, we're still, Julia Crenshaw, I mentioned in my article, had more home runs this season than she did in her first 3 years combined.
Her development to step into the role, like the hole left by Laird and Honnold, like was fantastic.
Yeah.
Julia was great.
They said she learned how to hit for her height.
Yeah, so she said
how tall she is instead of as a catcher.
Yeah, Larissa said earlier in the season that they basically hired this company to figure out how everyone should swing based on their body type. And so Julia Crenshaw basically, I don't know like how much she changed her swing, but she clearly changed it enough to where she was generating a lot more both power and contact, because not only did she hit 14 home runs, she batted almost 400, which is pretty insane over an entire season. And to your point, Karen, about not getting a pitcher in the portal, I think a lot of that probably, if I had to make a guess, was a high level of confidence in the pitchers that they already had. Because Lauren Krings was the only major contributor from last year that was gone. And you still had a pair of really good starters in Sierra Harrison and Marissa McCann, both of which, as I said earlier, they pitched pretty well this season. Like their ERAs were higher than last season, but they weren't getting shelled every other game. They had fairly consistently like pretty good performances. And Taylor Pinnell,
question whether they were ready to really move into like the ace role that
I don't unless a major leap happens, I'm not sure either of them are going to be an ace. Yeah. They're both probably queens, but they're both face cards.
That was good.
I don't know about ace, but they're both definitely face cards. I mean, Taylor Pinnell is too. I think, and we've talked about this before, Karen. I think she is worlds better as a closer than she is as a starter.
I would like her to go back to the closer role.
I'd rather her continue to do that. I mean, one of the issues was Mizzou just wasn't in a lot of like closing situations because they were losing a lot.
Well, and I know I've mentioned like 6,000 times, but I really think that losing Lily Witten at winter break, like another person that like she was a solid midweeker, like losing her, I really think just made it so put all the more pressure on everybody else.
Yeah, and then when you talk about like landing good transfers, like I just think there were some that didn't work out the way that they wanted them to. I mean, Courtney Donahue was a nothing almost this season.
I couldn't even tell you the last time I saw her pitch. It was a long time ago.
And then like you look at on the offensive side, like we thought Maya Dodge was going to become one of the best players on the team.
Yeah.
And like outside
two-time MVC player of the year.
Like she was a mid-major demon. She comes south to Mizzou, and outside of the New York trip where she returned to her Northern Iowa production for a few days, not great. And so a part of that is kind of out of Mizzou's control. I mean, transfers just sometimes don't work out. I mean, look at Mizzou men's basketball 2 years ago. With the guys they brought in, a lot of them just weren't very good at basketball, relative to the Division I level. I should bring up that caveat.
Yeah. So, well, I know that they have a rock star freshman pitcher coming in next year in Abby Carr, who
Yes.
I think is like ranked in the top 30 in the country in terms of recruits. And I know you don't ever really know how freshmen are going to pitch, so it's hard to say, that we can expect a ton of her going forward, but I think that will help. I would love Larissa to find another pitcher in the portal that is capable of eating up some innings. They don't need to be a rock star, but somebody who has and that's a different type. I think my other thing is a different type of pitcher than Cece and Marissa were. I want somebody that's got a different type of arsenal, because the whole, they're both rise ball pitchers, prone to home runs.
We need some more
pitcher.
heaters back in the Mizzou pitching rotation. I completely agree, because like Marissa has great stuff. Like her off speed, when it's on, she is very difficult to hit against. But again, like as you said, she's very prone to home runs. If that off speed hangs in the air for too long, we saw so many of those.
Right.
Yeah, not just hit, but hit really hard. And then with Cece, she's not gonna put a whole lot of I just don't think her I don't think she's a fastball pitcher, where that's like an elite pitch in her arsenal. And with Lauren Krings, she could blow you away.
Yes.
And that was extremely helpful when she needed a shutdown pitch. That was her shutdown pitch. And so I think we need to #bring heaters back to the Mizzou. I mean, look at Taylor Pinnell. She was hitting 70 almost. And she still, I mean, she said
I miss seeing that Taylor Pinnell, hadn't you?
She had ice in her veins. It would just dump. And I think Sierra really played well against Krings with that. I think there was some confidence lost of losing your teammate who you could rely on, and had that balance and kind of a complementary attack where Cece would come in at the end, and it was then you need those more tactical kind of going through some of the different pitches, versus Kring's sequence was just fire always. But I think Cece relied on the balance of that, and when they lose that, then there was a weird lack of compensation.
Yeah, so I would like to very much for her to add to the pitching depth. Also, shout out JC Cruze, who barely played throughout her 4 years. You know what? She did pretty well this year. I was quite happy to see that. Also, given the fact that apparently when she signed at Mizzou as a freshman, she was a top 100, a top 70 recruit. I can't remember I kept transposing the numbers. I couldn't remember if it was 46 or 64, but so no matter which number it was, in the top 70 of recruits for her freshman year. And I think she got hurt her freshman year or something, and then just kind of fell behind. But I was happy to see her get into some games this year and actually, pitch pretty well. So props to her. And
Yeah.
she was a great interview the last series when we finally got to talk to her for the first time in 4 years.
Yeah, I my take on that is like she could have easily gone somewhere else.
Mhm.
I mean, it was a big jump for her to start. I mean, she's from Southern California, and I don't know if you know anything about Southern California. Pretty different than Mid Missouri in a lot of aspects.
Yeah.
And as you said, Karen, she was a fairly highly touted recruit. That was at least the expectation was probably for her to become a regular in the rotation. Things didn't work out, and she barely played, but she stayed.
Yeah.
She stayed here all 4 years. And could she have gone somewhere else, whether that be another power conference team or a mid-major squad, and played a lot and probably played really well? Yeah, I'm pretty confident in that. But if you want to talk about culture and why people
Yeah.
should go to Mizzou softball, I think JC is a shining example because it was so easy for her to leave. And there
Yeah.
were other factors that made her stay. And that I think is commendable on both her and the program as a whole, because that is becoming increasingly more rare in this day and age.
Yes. For sure. So yeah, I guess that's about all for softball. We'll see how it goes moving forward. I'm interested to see if there are any staff changes or I mean she just got a bunch of new staff, so I can't imagine that there's going to be any changes. I know the idea has been floated that she finds somebody to actually serve as a pitching coach so then she doesn't have to manage the game while also serving as a pitching coach. I don't know if if anything like that'll happen. So I'll just be watching in the portal and see what she does and hope that next year is better. I know some people were floating on Twitter that she's like on a hot seat, and I was like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. They are literally 1 year away from having almost made the women's college World Series and have made 2 SEC title games in the past 3-4 years. Like, no, her seat isn't remotely warm. It won't eat if she has another bad season. Maybe it's like 2 degrees warmer. Like, she ain't going anywhere.
She is the, let me pick my words carefully here. Look, she's the reverse pinched in. Like, her seat should not be hot because she has proven herself for many years. I just
agree.
think I just think people are impatient and also don't really follow softball until it's convenient for them to talk about it.
Right.
If I'm going to be completely honest, like, is it easy to say that Carrick Jackson should be fired as the Mizzou baseball coach? Yeah, super. But you got to consider a lot of other things, I think, before you come to a conclusion that's even remotely close to that. And so the people saying that Larissa Anderson's seat is warm, her seat's about as
Or
warm
the
as
same people that say Dennis Gage should have been fired this year.
Yeah. Again, I think just especially like today, like there are a lot of things that play into this, but people are not as patient as they used to be with a lot of things. If they don't experience instant success, then they at the very least look to move on from it, which I think is a dangerous way to live.
I agree.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Heinrich. I am the current beat writer for soccer, women's basketball, and sometimes softball for Rock M Nation. I am a sophomore. To answer the opening question of how I think Mizzou Athletics did this year, I would give them overall a B. Very good progress made on the football side. Another very strong year. Men's basketball is back to making the tournament. Gymnastics had a spectacular year, as everybody knows. Good strides from teams like tennis and track and field and swim and dive, but again, still a struggling year for teams like soccer, women's basketball, baseball, and softball having the down years that they have keep this from being anywhere higher. So a good year from Mizzou Athletics, but nothing special. Hopefully, Mizzou women's basketball can be contributing on the positive side. Let's take a look at some of the players that are going to make that happen, as the roster is finally starting to come together. We now have 11 confirmed people signed to the roster as of right now. There are no more in limbo, no more Kelly bat signals coming out a couple days early, at least to our knowledge. In the past week, since we recorded the last podcast, they added Lisa Thompson from Rutgers and Jayla Smith from Purdue. Lisa Thompson is from Joliet, Illinois. Started a bunch of games in both of her first couple seasons, averaged 7 points as a freshman and then 5 as a sophomore. Very good contributing off-ball guard. Jayla Smith is going to be entering her senior year. Only played 2 games last year as she was hurt, but has been a very valuable bench player for the Boilermakers. Averaged upwards of nearly 8 points her sophomore year. Hasn't quite reached back to those heights, but still been a good contributor off the bench for a Mizzou team that has desperately needed depth. They have some experience on the roster, but just looking at the number of players, 11 is barely enough to fill out a full rotation. So if 1 or 2 players go down, they're going to need that depth that has that experience, that has that willingness to step up and play at an SEC level. You would feel pretty good about the starting lineup. That's kind of what Kelly Harper went after first. If I were to guess, it's probably going to be Sanaya Tyler, the transfer from Kentucky at the 1, Shannon Dowell, the transfer from Illinois State at the 2. I would probably guess Abby Schreck, stretching all the way to the 3. Maybe that role fits in for someone like Lisa Thompson. We'll see. Then Grace Slaughter at the 4 and Jordana Reisma at the 5 from Cleveland State. So there's a lot of options this team has. The rest of the roster, especially the returners, Avery Kroenke, Hannah Linthicum, are going to fill in some very valuable playing time minutes. But I think the real question that everyone has is, what are they going to do with that backup center position? Reisma can only play so much. They tried it with Hannah Linthicum during her freshman year, and things didn't quite work out. So I would expect Mizzou to make 1 or 2 more moves, specifically towards more on the forward end, as the guard depth is in a really nice spot. And I expect them this upcoming year to be very guard heavy, to be running a lot of small ball lineups, a lot of threes. But I think that's where this Mizzou team can strive at its best. So when we spoke to Kelly Harper, she said she's not going to fill all 15 spots just to fill them. So I would actually be shocked this late in the portal cycle if she fills all 15, but I could see this team getting upwards of 13 players, especially when we're looking at forward depth. And on the recruiting trail, Kelly Harper has been very active. We've seen a lot of people being offered from the 2026-2027 class from Mizzou, something we didn't see a lot during the tenure of Robin Pinchton. So that's something that we're going to get excited about to look forward to, as Kelly Harper's harping, no pun intended, on bringing in the future and bringing in high school recruits to really keep this team at a higher level as she hopes to take them back to the tournament. So I think for the most part, Mizzou women's basketball moving in the right direction. I think there's a lot of good things that are happening within this program. Just got to keep the train moving, add 1 or 2 more pieces, and this team may be competing to make it to the WNIT, maybe to the WBIT, even the NCAA tournament in year 1. But I guess we'll have to see how it all shakes out. Thank you so much.
We will close things out with my favorite topic, gymnastics. So definitely some news recently. I was getting on their case, I'm like, you guys, I have a day job. I need to do my day job. Can we please stop letting go all this news in the middle of the damn day? So, big news is that we'll start with the return of Grace Ann Davis and Laura McPherson, my Achilles twins duo. I named them. I'm sure they would love to know that that's what I call them, but they both announced that they would be returning. I had a feeling that it was happening. Lauren's posts never quite, her social media posts and the way that her teammates were responding to her never gave the idea that she was done. I don't think so. I was pretty certain that she was probably going to come back, despite not actually knowing that she was going to come back. With Grace Ann, I would say for 3/4 of the season, I was pretty sure she was gone. But I think the success that the team had, how awesome everything was, I think that might have started to turn it a little bit for her. Again, I don't know entirely, but I started seeing some of her social media posts where she was back on the beam. And I'm like, if she's retired, what's she doing back on that beam? Like, what is, like, that's weird. And then at the banquet this past weekend, Shannon was like, we will have some news about returners early in the week. Monday, right? And Ryan was like, yeah, Monday. And he was like, so you'll have to wait till then, Karen. But so Lauren wasn't at the banquet because she has a twin brother who was graduating from University of Arizona. So she was there, from my understanding. But when the seniors came up and gave their like little speeches and stuff, like, I'm going to miss this about this team and, all this stuff, Grace Ann notably was not up there with them. So it was like, well, that's interesting. So then they finish and we're done. Shan comes over to the table that I'm sitting with some of the booster people, and somebody else is like, I noticed somebody wasn't up there with those seniors. And I was like, yeah, Shan, what's up with that? Like, Grace Ann wasn't up there. And he was like, guess she'll have to see. And just wouldn't say anything about it. But it was like, come on, like, we know. So this is major that they are back, because Lauren McPherson was like one of the, like, when she first committed to Mizzou from San Jose State, like, the gym turnout went wild because all around competitor, like, had all these all conference awards and stuff, like, so good at every event, but especially events that Mizzou desperately needs reinforcements on. She is a 9925 on bars, a bars rotation that is losing 4 out of their 6 regular rotation members. So that is huge. But she'll be back on that. And then Beam is losing two people, I think. She had a 995 on Beam. So it's like she's going to immediately slot into that top spot on Beam. And then Grace Ann's coming back, and that's also incredible because prior to I went to all those inter squad meets before she got hurt, and her vaults were looking the best they've ever looked in her life. So getting her back on vault, which her highest score was from this past year, 9875 from 2024. Getting her back on vault, amazing. They need help on vault. And then also more than that on Beam, 9925 Beam. So really great. And then the other bit of news for gymnastics would be the addition of Michaela Green, who is a grad transfer from Illinois, continuing the now famous, I guess, Illinois to Mizzou gymnastics pipeline, because she's following in the footsteps of Abby Miller, her teammate who came here for her final year. So welcome, Michaela. She is a bars specialist, so also hitting like a major need for this team. She won 7 individual event titles this past year. Scored 9925 like four times, I think, including at Big Tens and at regional finals, I think, or one of the regional meets. I can't remember now. But so like clearly can also perform very well under pressure, Bryce Light. So that's really awesome. And Shannon told me when I emailed him about something completely different, not even related to gymnastics. I was telling him to tell people to sign up for my class. And then he comes back with, "Oh, by the way, you should be watching socials because I'm expecting you may be seeing my bat signal because I'm expecting 1 to 2 more soon." It's like, what? So they technically only have one spotter in their roster if the whole house settlement roster thing is, if whatever's going on with that, like if it actually works out, they really only have one spot. But I know that like the debate right now is whether or not that those roster, what is it, thresholds, I can't even think anymore, like the actual number of people that they're allowed to have on the team, if that is going to actually be a thing or not. So we know at least one more's coming, if not two. This team is shaping up to be amazing. I'm very excited. They are very excited. They have gotten the taste of third nationals, and now they want a number 2 trophy. Like the goal is they are not getting complacent. They're fighting, and it's just, yeah. It's been an awesome season. It's gonna be an awesome off season. I'm already trying to think about lineups and stuff for next year. Me and Grace Anger and Nate Salzman have just been going crazy trying to figure out who they should nab in the portal and who's going to be on what next year. And yeah. Oh, and before I forget, Abigail was talking earlier about Jonathan and how he's not doing outdoors because preparing for those other elite events. So Coach Whitney has been with Kaya Tanskanen, who is back in Finland currently. She, almost right after getting back from nationals, they flew out to Finland for the Finnish championships. She did not think that it was her best performance, but she got 3 bronze medals in all around beam and bars, I think. So that qualifies her for some other event next, like maybe Europeans or something like that. So Lacey Rubin, beam coach, and Jackie went on Nate and Grace's KCOU podcast, The Flip Side. And we're talking about how Kaya is not only like an amazing student, like 4.0 student, but also that she is like the most determined person they'd ever seen. So she would do her drills and practice her NCAA, and then like she would immediately bust out like working on her elite skills because they're different. Like she's doing completely different routines than she was doing in NCAA. So like she's got a completely different beam, not dismount, way to get onto the beam. I don't know what that's called. I don't know. Cool as hell. Whatever it is. So she would go back and forth between like, okay, I'm done with the NCAA stuff. Now I'm going to go work on this elite stuff. So she just determined to keep doing elite gymnastics on the side and kind of working with Mizzou and with her Finnish national team to keep that going. So I think that she's the first one that Mizzou's had that has done both at the same time. Because like I think Helen used to do elite when she was a kid, so it never would have been at the same time that she would have been at Mizzou. Olivia Kelly's talked a little bit about maybe getting back into elite and competing for Barbados because she went to the World Championships last year and competed for Barbados. So she may get back into it too. I'm excited to see because Mizzou isn't normally known as a place where elite gymnasts will go. And if Kai is showing that, like, look, I can do both and I'm excelling in both areas, then that's another recruiting tool for Mizzou to show that they also can take care of the gymnasts who are interested in pursuing both of those avenues, and that they work with them on that. So I think that that's really cool. But so that's all from gymnastics, I think. Yeah, so I think we're done here. Thank you, guys, for joining me and Matthew, even though he ran away. Appreciate it. I know everyone is super busy. And yeah, I don't know when we'll be back again. I'll have to check everybody's schedules. Yeah, I guess that's about all. So congratulations, Abigail, on your upcoming graduation. And your awesome team performance at Stay of the Yaya today. Was that a real game that you guys made?
No, but there was a moment when we had to tell our professors that, because I think that they really wanted us to create the game, and we did have to tell them we are not video game programmers. I think there was a moment when they were like, well, this would be really cool as like a game, and we're like, so it's just our creative expression, like it's our big idea, but we did have to clarify we will not be
like it would be a game if we could, but
right. But I think we disappointed them slightly at that, and they're like, oh, we see you. We're like, sorry guys.
I'm slightly disappointed at that too.
Yeah.
Now.
Maybe
I really wanted to play this game even though I'm not in the Yaya market.
I'm glad that it was so effective.
Great performance, great everything. Thank you guys. MIZ.
ZOU. Have a good night.
Until next time.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.